Welcome everyone to Trek Central Weekly. I am Commander Dom from Trek Central, and we are here to talk about episode 6 of Strange New Worlds, which has a really long title. And can I remember the title off the top of my head? No. So we have our other co-hosts to help me with this title. So introduce yourself and the name of the episode.
Here, the episode. Well, we should introduce the episode first.
Yes.
That's the main attraction, right? The star of the show. The episode is "Lift Us Where Suffering Cannot Reach,"
which is a very long TOS style for "The World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky" kind of title. Which
TOS has the best episode covers or best episode titles.
Yes, but also talking about covers, there's some great posters in TOS and some great posters which people do of the Strange New Worlds episodes. I think JJ Lendl, I believe their name is, who does some great episode cover art of these episodes. So if you're interested in that, go look at them on Twitter. But yes, introduce yourselves as the co-hosts of this stream.
I am Othery from the Text Trek podcast and YouTube channel, and I'm also here with my other good friend over one of these directions.
Over here, I'm Starfleet Boy from the Starfleet Boy YouTube channel, and here on Trek Central. Happy to be here. Sunday, wrapping up another exciting week in Trek with you guys is like the highlight of my week. So thank you. I've been under the weather, so I needed this.
Yes, I heard. Are you feeling better today then?
Much better. I still got a little rumbly in my tumbly, but nothing as bad as yesterday.
Yes, and nothing as bad as some of the things that happen in this episode.
Yes, it's true.
So, yes.
Very true.
So first, I guess, just instead of going straight into the episode, what were your thoughts on this episode, how it dealt with the themes and such? Text Trek, do you want to start with that?
So this episode was interesting, coming off of last week's more lighthearted episode, which was coming off of the week before that's more dark, serious episode. So the show's kind of, back and forth in tone, and I like that. And there was a pretty serious science fiction concept explored fairly, I guess, taking it very serious, but at the same time, you do kind of have to make like allowances, like, oh wow, like, is that really believable that technology would work like this? And it ultimately depends on it. I think, like, do you enjoy the story? Do you like the story enough that you're willing to, buy into it and accept it in order to get that moral quandary, that moral conundrum, that dilemma, the episode where you have to balance the notions of like, okay, does A justify the cost of B, and what would I do if I was in the situation? And it's something that Trek has a very, very rich tradition of exploring those types of stories. So yeah, I think it was a lot of fun to see it return to something like that. One specific episode telling this one focused tale of a standard Star Trek moral conundrum. Normally in the live action shows lately, they would be exploring something like that over like a season-long arc, and I kind of like just the small focus of one episode like Strange New Worlds has been doing all season long.
Yes, very much. And Starfleet Boy, what were your thoughts? Actually, first, it seems we're having some technical issues. I have tried to fix that. If you could just let us know in chat if there are any continuing issues. But yes, Starfleet Boy, what were your thoughts on this episode, just overall in general?
I was really impressed with this episode. Didn't know what it was going to entail, and watching it the first time around, I think the episode did a great job of leading me in another direction. I know some folks spotted the thing right away, but for me, I was totally like thinking something different was going to happen, and then when the twist comes about, I was like, jaw drop, like, oh no, is this really happening type of thing. So yeah, I think this is one of the darkest episodes of Star Trek that I can recall, but also one of the most profound ones as well, which I think Star Trek does a really good job of like balancing that that darkness or that like harrowing message, but with like thoughtful conversation, or at least it has produced a lot of thoughtful conversation. I've seen a lot of talk about this episode online, and just in general, I keep going back to it and just like thinking of new little things and stuff like that. So yeah, overall, a very good episode. Not one that was easy to watch per se, but especially around the end, but one that I think is definitely worthy of recognition, just beyond even just the series. Like in all of Star Trek, I think it's an episode that people will remember and talk about.
Yes, I definitely think it's one of those episodes which will be discussed for quite a while, along with some of the great Trek episodes. But like you said, some people were able to see that it happened. If you had watched our preview video we did on this, I was able to predict that this kind of thing was going to happen. And even knowing that that is probably where this episode and where the plot is going to go, it was still very shocking to see, and unfortunately very topical in another sense as well. And a lot of these themes, you can then go and look back and see that, it's still some of the similar themes that we see in TOS and such, and it's a shame that we have to go back and talk about them. But in a way, it's very storybook and folktale like, in that it's imparting these messages that have to be retold time and time again for the new generation who do not want to watch the original series or want to watch the old things which tell these themes. You have this new thing which does it in a fresh way but still hammers home what it's trying to say.
Dom, if you'll indulge, the audience has been pointing out, and I agree, how pleasant your voice is. Will you say for us, a Rigelian tiger pounces with no warning? Would you mind saying that line just for us?
A Rigelian tiger pounces with no warning.
Excellent.
There you go. And talking of chat, I do have to give a shout out to not only the great people in chat, who I have to thank for the compliments, but to Frank Saxton, who became a member at a couple of hours ago. If you we thank you very much. You don't have to just join. You can join a member during the live stream, and we can shout you out live. But I just made sure to catch that you did that, so we could say thank you very much. And for those who don't know, you can join the memberships on the channel, where you get access to some great emotes, hopefully some more things in the future, and just continue to support us, and we are very appreciative of that, so thank you.
Thank you to all our members. They appear green. Their username appears green in the chat. So
yes, and they have a Trek Central logo next to their name, which changes color depending on how long they subscribe, how long they are a member for, which is nice. So I've seen a couple of older members in the chat, and they have different logos, which is very nice. So we thank you all for that. And if you're interested, I think there's a link in the description, as well as a thing somewhere on YouTube which says join. But yes, that's the member stuff. But let's talk about this episode, and I guess let's start at the beginning, because there is a lot to discuss in this episode and a lot going more into the heavier stuff. But we start this episode with just the Enterprise stumbling upon a distress call from a shuttle. And these were some very interesting ships. We had a ship which had a turret system, which very much isn't what we usually see in Star Trek. Obviously, the Enterprise kind of has bull turrets, but it's still phasers. I guess if I'm remembering correctly, the last turret would have been the Vengeance in Into Darkness, maybe.
This looked like a Earth Navy.
Yes.
With gun turrets on it, like cannons.
Yeah, and it was also really, really cool to see that the ship was using grappling hooks to get its prey, the shuttle that it was targeting. Very much
style.
NX-01 Enterprise. So it was very nice. And then looking at the other shuttle, it was very advanced looking and had a really weird paint scheme. The concept artist who drew this scene posted their concept art on Twitter. I think it's... Oh, I'm trying to remember their name on Twitter. It'll come back to me. But yeah, we retweeted it on the Trek Central social media on Twitter. So go there if you want to see this concept art. But it's of this very multi-windowed white shuttle, very regal looking. But then in the episode, we see it has a color scheme. And we've had a couple of like colored ships in Strange New Worlds of different like color schemes. So it was just very interesting to see these ships.
Yeah, I really liked the design of the Magellan, and what was the colony called?
Prospect 7.
Prospect 7. Yeah, the Prospect 7 shuttle or cruiser was really cool as well. I I appreciate that. Like, I always like when an antagonist with lower firepower still fires upon a ship.
They were very determined. They're trying to save this child.
Yeah, it's true. They were, and that was one of the things that like I think was done really well is that like not see, I would have liked to have seen the colonists, but like that would have totally spoiled everything because you would have seen that they just look, pretty much similar to the Magellans, But that was one of the things that really was good about this episode is that they remain, the colonists remain faceless, so we kind of like sided with the Magellans because those are the people that we knew, right?
And
so
also
I like the way
the only antagonists you saw, they were described as traitors. You have a guardsman whose token like sigil thing coin was damaged, and he fired upon people and fled, and you're like, oh, this is a bad person. But then
right
it changes when you get to the end of the episode and it's finally revealed, oh yeah, the Magellans kind of suck as a people, and that was actually someone trying to do good. So it is very fascinating.
And it does go to show that the Magellans are a bit duplicitous because they would know the dynamic between themselves and they describe them as aliens. You would think that, like they were intentionally like not telling the truth.
And I think that's really
she was
interesting.
Being dishonest intentionally.
Yeah.
There at the beginning.
But then you could also see it as, these Magellans think of their city and their planet as paradise. So anyone who wants to leave paradise, they're the other. They're something which we don't accept them as Magellans. So it is like misleading, but you can also sense that there is some truth from their perspective and their mindset that those are aliens because they don't accept living here. They don't accept paradise, even though there's a cost to it. Yeah, they went to, they fled the Garden of Eden to this barren place, from their point of view. So we don't view them as us.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And actually, that's, talk about how this episode just keeps delivering, like, messages, like, that's the same thing. We're all living on this one planet Earth. We're all humans, yet we find so many reasons to think of people as the other when in fact that they are not. That's cool. I like that.
Yeah, and Desert Rat points out in the chat the ones who walk away from Omelas, which is I think Ursula Le Guin novel, which has this same idea. Short story. Yeah.
They're like 5 pages long. I read it.
You read it, right?
Friday.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. I recommend people read it. It's easy to find online, and you can read it in 5 minutes, and it's a very interesting read.
Oh, that's shorter than I imagined.
Yeah. Yeah. Apparently, our friend Aaron Harvey was pointing out in the chat, and some other folks, that Gene Roddenberry had a similar idea in TOS that this was kind of like taken from. Is that right? Do you guys know anything about that?
I had not heard that before, but I know people have been mentioning that lately. It's also interesting because they used those who walk away from Omelas back in season 3 of Discovery. Who was it Akiva Goldsman, who was like, we're big fans of that story, and we used that for the whole idea behind the burn in that child.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
interesting.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
the first time I had ever heard of it.
yeah,
Um, but I hadn't read a ton of Le Guin. They named a ship after her too.
yes, they did.
I mainly just know her from the Earthsea series of books, but yeah, she's written a ton of short stories, and after reading those who walk away from Omelos, I'm curious to read more. But it's a very different story. It's more treating this idea as a hypothetical, as kind of a thought experiment. Like, would it be worth it having like a perfect city? There'd have to be one child who can never be shown any kindness, and it's not really meant to be taken literally. Whereas this story in Star Trek takes a different approach where it does
Hmm.
show, okay, well, what if that actually did happen? What if there was a planet that was based on this concept? So I like that it actually was explored in Star Trek. I think they're two different approaches, but
I
I
think they
recommend
are two
people
different
read it.
approaches because from what I've heard, the short story is more doing this theme of a scapegoat for society, whereas this episode is very much what are the sacrifices a society is willing to make to progress to, well, not progress, but to maintain its status quo.
Yeah, to maintain its
Yeah.
utopia.
Yeah, and what I find really fascinating is the character of Allura with this idea of the status quo. So we meet Allura, who apparently met Pike a decade or more ago when he was just a lieutenant, and he saved her from a shuttle accident near a pulsar. Now, we learn later in the episode that she went out to try and find a alternative means of maintaining paradise, maintaining Majalis, and she didn't find it. And instead of continuing to look, she just fell to indolence and was like, okay, well, I can't make this system any better, so I can't save our paradise and not have to make the sacrifice, so I'm going to actively take part in it. And I think such a character is quite interesting to look at.
And the Magellans have been looking for an alternative for centuries, she says.
Mm.
So they aren't exactly like, she does also say, like, unlike and I'm assuming she's talking more about humanity's past or the Federation's past than present, but although there's probably still suffering, of children going on in the current Federation, but she does mention that, like, unlike you, we look like we know what's happening, like, but I didn't get the impression that the first servant knew his fate entirely.
No.
I felt like
He was
there was
definitely
a little
taken
bit
back,
of
and I think
I
there
disagree.
was
I think he knew.
indoctrination there.
I think he knew that he would have to be, plugged into that chair and everything.
Oh,
But
I think
just
he knew
been, like,
that.
so
Yeah.
conditioned. It was people telling him his whole life, like, this is a great honor. You're going to be loved by everyone.
see.
You're the hero, the savior of our people. But in the heat of the moment, when he sees the dead body being pulled out, yeah, that's like when it hit him, like, oh my God, like the gravity of it. But like when because he still pulls himself back together after that moment of
He
shock and
does.
hesitation.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think thinking of, the Magellans for centuries tried to find an alternative. I think they were so preoccupied with maintaining this paradise, they thought it was, oh, we're the safest, freest, technologically advanced society. We need to keep this place. That the mere concept of, oh, well, we have smart children, we can go to Prospect 7 and make that paradise. They were so preoccupied with maintaining this paradise, and they were like, well, if we change, there's a chance it may get worse. But then that completely gets rid of the chance that it could get better.
That's another interesting thing. Magellan 3, or whatever the name of the planet. I'm assuming it's 3, but
Majalis.
whatever.
It's just
Majalis, thank you. Majalis is built in the clouds upon a planet that has lakes of acid and rivers of lava and stuff like that. So it's harsh conditions. At one point they may have come from somewhere else and colonized this world, or they may have even been born of this world on a safe harbor. Like maybe there's like areas of the planet that are safe for,
or it was something was going to happen to their planet, some sort of like volcanic
and this
activity,
was their solution.
and that was their solution.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Geological shift.
Geological. But it is interesting that the people from the other colony also live on a very harsh world. It's not exactly a paradise either. Like, it was at, what is it, L-class planet, I think is what they described it as.
I didn't hear that, but yeah.
Yeah, so it is interesting that, but like you'd be leaving, their solution on Majalis was to build these cities in the clouds and have this like, supercomputer like basically probably sustaining all that,
Mm.
and also other things that we, other aspects of their society that, we're not quite clear about, that's interesting that another group left to this other harsh world and are starting to create a new life there without the same mistakes or the same, quandaries that Majalis has. And so I like that there is that underlying story there as well.
And one thing I really liked was just the symbolic world building that Majalis was, where you have this serene, like, I think it's very much emphasized when you see a shot with Pike on the bridge and you see Majalis behind him and you see the green luscious cityscape on part of the island, part of the planet, and then the rest of the planet is just barren and red. Very much, I think, symbolizing that, oh, there's a facade of luscious paradise, but underneath is a world of suffering. And they are intentionally causing that suffering and just being like, oh, it's paradise up here. Don't look behind the curtain.
Pay no attention to the little boy behind the curtain.
The little boy in the torture chair. But the first time I watched this, and I do recommend people watch it multiple times because I think this benefited more from a second viewing than any other episode of Strange New Worlds. But when I watched it the first time, I had a very similar reaction to Pike. I was angry. I was shocked. I had like the big gut punch that they wanted the audience to feel when they're like, oh my god, this is so terrible, this is horrid, how could you people live with yourselves? The second time I watched it, I was actually, I'm not going to say like I sided with Laura, but I actually thought about what she was saying a bit more, and I think you do have to ask yourself, like, would this be worth it? Like the fact that like they can cure disease, like, like, yeah, your family members aren't going to like get cancer and die here. They're gonna be able to be saved with like this impressive medical technology. Your cities are just going to be like these perfect harmonious places with like no crime. They're going to be safe. This is like, man, like it really would be something worth taking the time. Like, would you want to undo all of that and destroy it just to save like a single individual? Like Spock always taught us, the good of the many outweigh the good of the few or the one. So if we actually have to apply that piece of logic here, what would we decide?
Yeah, and
well, I think
definitely
this is where. Sorry, go ahead, Dom.
Oh well, yeah, I was just trying to say, I definitely think that question was posed to Pike in as the perspective of the audience of, you wouldn't have to suffer, you wouldn't have to go through with that fate you saw because we could just, make you better. And Pike considers it, but his morals and his ethics just won't allow it.
And I think this is a case where Kirk's the good of the one sometimes outweighs the good of the many would probably apply, although you wouldn't, not in the sense of like, I wouldn't have taken the boy out of the situation, but I would definitely be like, Magellan's, it's been centuries, what's up, figure it out. Like, this is it, you know what I mean? Like,
but they're trying.
Yes, but they didn't even consider we can move to another place.
Yeah, they
just wanted their paradise.
Before we move on from this subject, earlier in the chat, Cerulean Blue wrote this thing that I was kind of like really kind of compelled by, which is, I wonder, the child had his own subspace frequency that Spock was able to track down. Now that he's plugged into the machine, could he connect to that frequency and talk to Spock again in the future? I mean, I love that.
It wasn't him making his own subspace frequency. He was messing with the equipment. And he doesn't have that equipment in the chair. So he was messing with the stuff he used to make the ionized gas, a hopscotch thing.
It would be neat if this kid somehow transforms the machine, though. It would be neat to have a follow-up to this episode in some future season of Strange New Worlds, because presumably he'll be plugged into this thing while it's draining his life for a few years.
That's the interesting thing, though, is when we get the horrifying reveal of what happens to the previous first servant. and which was a sight. That was still a child. That wasn't grown up or anything. So
yeah. So how
often do
Yeah.
they get a new first servant? Is it a monthly thing? Is it a yearly thing? Because it can't be like more than 5 years, I would say. And
Yeah, I think it's like every few years like that.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that did this child originally have a name? Or were they born as the first servant? And do all Magellans have this quantum implants inside them, or is it only given to childs deemed as the first servant? Allura at the end of the episode says, will you save the next child? Will you save her? And I think that emphasizes that they already know who the next one is. They've already been selected.
They probably select the new one at like that ceremony when they put the
Star Trek Pike said that the first servant is picked by lottery.
Yeah, that's true. Which is also an Ursula Le Guin thing, I think. But yeah, what a horrible lottery.
And I think going on this, what I really loved in this episode was the kind of arc which what was his name? Elder Gamal, yes.
Yeah.
Who's played by Hus Madhaji, I believe. Who did an excellent job, but I think his arc in the episode, going from, the first time we see him, Pike asks, are you the boy's father? He says, only in a biological sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the end of the episode, willing to risk exile to save this boy who he then calls, he is my son, he is my child. I thought that was really nice of just a parent who, to begin with, was like, okay, I'm going to go along with what society says to do with my child. But then by the end, realizing that, this is my child. I do not want this to happen to them. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure that they have a good life. And unfortunately, he doesn't succeed, and he goes and leaves to Prospect 7. But I thought that was a fascinating character as well.
And he's going to stay in the fight. He says, I couldn't save my kid, but maybe I can save the next one. So I like that, and that's why I say the episode benefits from a second viewing, because then his motivation and Allura's motivation from the very beginning, and things make a lot more sense. There in the opening, like you said, when he introduces himself as when he's asked, is he the boy's father, and he says, well, only in a biological sense. So you get the impression, this guy is a jerk.
Yeah.
He doesn't sound like he cares about his kid. By the time you see the end of it, you're like, oh no, this guy was actually fighting to save his kid the entire episode.
And you can even look at that from throughout the episode. He was like not letting the first servant play or do anything fun, and was just like, okay, we need to get you better. Okay, we need to get you to the planet. There's no time for this. But then you're like, oh, okay, and then the other kidnapping attempt happens.
And a second ago, Dom, what you asked about like the quantum implants, if those are in everyone or only in the first servant. I think those are only in the first servant because they had that neural device thing that was going to, I guess, scramble the implants and make them not work, and that would have prevented him
from doing
being
his job.
Usable.
Yeah,
as the first.
I think that's
servant.
what they said.
Well, that makes sense why only the first servant at this age or whatever could be used for the function. She's like our whole society.
It has to be a child.
It has to be a child, but that child specifically
because the implants have already been like tuned for this device.
For this device, yeah, exactly.
Right. Otherwise, you could be like, oh, the kid got kidnapped. Okay, just grab another one.
Pop another kid.
So it takes like a while for them, I guess, like to grow and have like the implants installed and everything. But and that's what I'm saying. Like it does kind of feel like very, very convenient. Like the writers constructed these very specific parameters for how the technology works, what makes it work. But in order to have that conundrum of like, oh well, is this the right thing? Is it the wrong thing? And then have like that debate of over the ethics of it all. You kind of have to buy into, okay, well these are the rules, so
Definitely.
I accept it. But I had to watch it a couple of times, but yeah, it ultimately won me over.
Definitely. I think it won me over from the first watch. And
Another good comment from Cerulean Blue. Sirach Lofton on the Seventh Rule mentioned this child sacrifice plot going all the way back to the biblical Abraham and Isaac story in the Old Testament. It's a story as old as stories themselves. That's great. I think that's one of the reasons why it resonates so much, is because it's true. It is in our cultural, it's in our ethos, if you will. Like it is a story that's been told a lot.
Yeah, we're biologically hardwired to value the lives of our offspring as like one of our highest concerns that we're able to have, that our brains are able to process. So asking yourself, like, would you give that up, or would you ask someone else to give that up for the greater good of all? That is a question that has been asked for as long as civilization has been around.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it definitely does hit home for a lot of people. And I think, in a way, it's... how to say... I think it's good that this episode came out. I think it's better that it didn't come out a couple of weeks before. Because it might have hit home a bit too hard for a lot of people. But it's still something that we have to talk about, and something which people have to be hit over the head with, of this message. And is this right? And should this be done? And should something be done about it to make the systems that we live in better? And, even if there is a chance that things get worse, why don't we try and have the chance to make things better?
Well, yeah, and it's great that you brought that up. It does tie in directly with, like, the themes of, is this privilege that we have worth the price that we're paying for it? And it's very relevant to those of us who live in the United States and are seeing, gun violence is truly out of control. So, is the freedom to own a weapon, an AR-47 or whatever, worth the
sacrifice?
Or AK-47?
Or 15, thank you. Did I say AK-47?
Yeah.
I mixed the two up. Sorry, I don't have guns.
It's good to hear. But and then, the episode, even if it was just that stuff, it would still be hitting home. But when it has a particular line which Allura said, which was, our founders designed it that way, we don't know why. I think very much was
well done,
hitting there.
Well said, yeah.
And I would like to know from a US perspective what that felt like to see that in a Star Trek episode, because I'm from England, so it doesn't hit as hard or resonate as much with me. So I just want to know what that was like, seeing that and hearing that.
I didn't make that connection there with that line, but to me what it felt like instead is, those of us that live in the first world or developed nations or whatever you want to call it, and we have pretty comfy lives. Even those of us that, if you're lower income in parts of Europe or North America, you're still having a much better life than a lot of people in a lot of the poor parts of the world. And a lot of the things that we enjoy casually, like our phones all have like these lithium batteries. A lot of the lithium mines use what's pretty much basically slave labor, or the chocolate in our candy, or like the diamonds in our jewelry. Like a lot of the things that we enjoy, a lot of these luxury items that we don't even like really need, we're only able to have these, for lack of a better term, like this paradise life because of the suffering of other people. And so, asking, is that worth it?
Yeah, and I think
that's where my mind went.
I think Allura saying, your federation has people who are worse off. We can talk about whether that's true later, but I think that was very much a message directly aimed at the audience and being like, well, you can judge us, but look at yourself and look at what's happening around you. can you say
You
you
know,
were any different?
I didn't think about it at the time, but now that you mention it, the whole why, like this is the thing is that like, you know, the founders like may have had an intention that was relevant at the time. Like who
Mm,
knows? Like this machine may have been a thing that they had no choice because it was like either, like save the civilization or not. But I think our founders there's a division here, but I think that there's a bunch of people who agree that our founders would want us to evolve. Like they would want us to be a nation that grows past like the struggles of the past. So we don't need
yes.
necessarily the things that they laid down at the time when they were necessary. So I think that's important, and I think that like resonates now for me. I didn't catch it when I first watched the episode, but it does make a lot of sense now that you put it that way.
Mm,
And it's like the rest of the world has evolved past this, but we still haven't. We're just holding on to something that's like, is it really useful? And no
yeah.
one really seems to know why, like everyone says, well, because it's in the Constitution, or like, because I have to have it. Like, what if someone
No, it's
invades?
because of the.
Those are, the,
I don't know
those are,
how much time we want to spend talking about this,
yeah,
but I mean, I can tell
yeah,
you
yeah.
exactly why. It's like it's pretty like well documented how well funded the gun
Mm,
lobby is
yeah.
But that's what I'm
Um,
trying
in
to
our
say is that
country.
it's not like it's not necessarily a rational reason.
and
And
I
it's more
think
of
there was
a
an aspect of this episode which, wasn't as spelled out as, the founders made it that way. But this idea that if you believe you live in paradise, you are blind to the suffering of others, and if you believe that the society you currently live in is perfect, then you cannot see its flaws. You cannot see
Right,
how you can
right.
improve it. If you believe it's the freest country in the world, you cannot see the binds that shackle us. If you think it's the safest, you cannot see the danger in your own society. So I
well
think,
put.
yeah, it very much.
Yeah,
Writing the
yeah,
review for this
sure.
episode was actually really, and just getting those thoughts out from what was in the episode was very enlightening. So I actually really think talking about this episode with, whether it's us talking about it now or anybody who's watching, talking about this episode with anyone else who's watched it is really, really useful. Yeah.
Right
Yeah.
on. Heavy stuff. Good stuff.
Yes, heavy stuff. So yeah, there's some other things in this episode we can talk about. And one aspect, I guess, is that, throughout these episodes, as we've seen, there's been like a through line of some stuff. Is Uhura on her rotation? Previously we got her in engineering, we got her doing minutes for the meeting last episode, and now she is in security. And as you made me ASMR read out earlier, Rigelian tiger pounces when you least expect it, or whatever that saying was. She was teamed up with La'an. What did you think of this utilization of Uhura and La'an in this episode?
I love that we're getting to see this aspect of Uhura, the cadet version of Uhura, and basically her beginnings in Starfleet. I also love that first of all, Uhura is not a character that we got a lot of in the original series, so it's great to see more of her. I don't know which is I'm gonna wait till the season to say which my favorite rotation is, but I think that one thing that I do like is about this particular rotation is that Leon did give Uhura a popular term today that I love to say is she gave her flowers for coming up with the solution. And Uhura was gonna be like, let me know what Captain Pike says, and Leon's like, no, you came up with this, you need to present it to him. So I thought that was really great. The rotation thing is pretty awesome. I think it makes sense. I like that Captain Pike wants everyone to experience different aspects of the ship. It just goes back to his like what I think is a superb leadership style, where a lot of things that a thing that can happen when you're fully focused on just your department is that you can get siloed into it.
Mm.
And so by rotating the crew, not only are you benefiting the ship, because if your chief security officer gets sidelined for whatever reason, someone can step in, or your engineer or whatnot. So there's a lot of redundancies and a lot of like, a better chance for success in a dangerous situation with this model. But among that, like aside from that, it's just like, really, it's just really putting a spotlight on how bright Uhura is. Like she's very smart, she's very intelligent, especially in her field of linguistics. I mean, like the connections she makes to like tie in this whole thing and to like kind of create the context around the Magellans and like the people from the Prospect colony and like showing that they're actually the same people and like it just with that little connection it like enhances your understanding of the whole situation, and it was just beautifully written and beautifully done. So I loved all of that, and it was funny as hell too, like when Ortega's is like repeating rule number 3 or whatever, like and,
how does
and just
Ortega's
moments...
know that though? Like
because she went
Leon?
through the same rotation.
No, she didn't. Ortega's
no.
has been on the Enterprise longer. Leon and
They're
Uhura
just
got
messing.
there like the same day in the first episode.
Oh, that's a really good point, Father. But I think that maybe Leon probably gave a crash course or something like that.
Like a refresher training.
A
to all the
refresher
senior
training to all the
officers.
senior
I mean,
officers.
like Pike knew them too. So
Yeah, so that
they
makes
learned
sense.
them at some point.
But yeah, what I really love about how they're using Uhura is how all these things that she does links back to linguistics, links back to her speciality. And, going with Hema and, engineering is just like linguistics. It's how seemingly uninteractive systems link together and interact with each other. And with this, it's the same with evidence and data and doing that investigative analysis and using linguistics for that. And I think that's really good writing. And just, utilizing Uhura as a way to see these different aspects of the ship is really well.
She's so good at all these different things, but it's all because of how she's applying her specific skill set, linguistics. Okay, well, she's able to work in engineering because, like she told Hemmer, like, yeah, it's kind of the same thing, seeing how these different things that are very different communicate with each other. Or, here with security, she's able to use that as an investigator and help solve the mystery of the attackers from Prospect 7.
Yeah. I think one thing that's interesting is La'an saying when they're on the planet going over the shuttle, always interact with consoles using your tricorder. But then being like, the reason is because, Klingon ships, they have a self-destruct system if you tamper with it.
Right.
So then I guess La'an would have learnt that from the Klingon War in Discovery,
Right.
which
She
is
probably
cool.
like
fought
that.
on the war.
Yeah.
Fought in
Yeah,
the war.
that makes
Because, like
sense.
I was saying, she is a newcomer to the Enterprise. The Enterprise sat out the war.
Yeah.
I don't think she did.
Yeah, exactly. So
I want that
was
novel.
just a nice little thing. And yeah, it's prime novel territory of just what was La'an doing during the Klingon War. And I would love if someone picks that up for a novel down the line. Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. Was there any other aspects of this episode one thing I want to just say, just outright, talking about just visuals and how it affects the story, is that the whole of Majalis, it looks very regal and serene and peaceful, whereas the throne room is very industrial looking. And it's very interesting that usually you would find that switched, whereas most of the planet is quite industrial, and then you have the place where it's run and overseen as being more regal. And I just thought that was a very interesting visual distinction that this episode did to further tie in that, it's how it works. Yeah.
It made me think of something, actually. I'm a big fan of speaking of novels, I'm a big fan of the Dune novels and the recent movie that came
Which
out, I guess,
has
last
Babs Olasmukin in it.
Yes, yeah, and
like 10
Benga
minutes.
is Jameis.
Yes.
So you can see him in that movie.
Yes.
One of the things they do in that series of books, which is in the future, but they hide technology intentionally like that, and everything looks kind of like old world, and you have like these prestigious royal families, and there's like a lot of decor and like traditional architecture and clothing and stuff like that. But they have advanced technology. They just keep it all hidden because it's considered, kind of ugly and unsightly. And I kind of like that. I'm just looking at the little office I'm in, and I have like cords and computers and all kinds of stuff just everywhere. Yeah, it would be kind of cool if that was all just kept out of sight, maybe.
And
Out of sight, out of mind.
Valamist brings up another point which we can discuss. Like we talked about how Strange New Worlds, even though it's episodic, still has those serialized aspects. That is Mbenga's kid, Rukia, I believe her name is?
Rukia.
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 Yes.
Nikia
A beautiful,
phone, right?
I like the name Rukia. It's a beautiful name, actually.
Yes. Who got that plot storyline, got some progression this episode. And I think it was very nice to see the First Servant interact and play with her, because it very much felt that, when Mbenga walked into the room, he was witnessing what he was essentially depriving her of. And even though it's it's for her to get better and
she was
to
even
find
saying,
a cure.
I was having fun, Dad.
Yeah.
It was like,
I just think that was very nice scene and you could see it in Mbenga's face, played really well by Babs, of just how, this is what you should be doing as a kid. I want what's best for you, but I have to do this so you can have that life.
What I loved also about that scene is that it showed, again, how brilliant this kid is, but B, that he's just a kid. He was like trying to play with Rukia. He wanted a friend. He wanted a pal. And then I appreciated that, like, Dr. like, he's so smart. He caught on to everything so quick. He's like, I like, you guys talk so loud. I had to think, like, when I couldn't find any information about the patient with the condition, I was like, oh, where would I hide her? And so he was like, oh, that, like, the kid figured out on his own that, Dr. Mbenga probably is hiding this patient in the transporter buffer because it would stall the condition and so on and so forth. So that was like touching as well. But then when he asked the first servant, hey, you can't tell any about this, and the dad walks in and he's like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I was just looking for food. It just was so touching. I mean, this kid is so cool. Like, this is like a really enlightened young person.
He's likable. He's
very likable. And
he's
like,
played really well by Ian Ho, I believe.
Choi, I believe.
Choi? Yes.
It's Ian Ho is correct, actually.
There we go.
Ian Ho, sorry.
Ian Ho, yeah.
Who does just a great job of playing this kid. And, child actors, usually really, really good or not the best. And I think he does an excellent job as First Servant.
Yeah, he's, phenomenal performance. Ian Ho was also in The Expanse, for those of you who saw the last season of The Expanse. So he's in there. I won't tell you what goes on
as
there.
Was he the kid in the final season? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I thought
that's him.
Okay.
The kid, the brother. The brother,
okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, is there anything else about this episode of Strange New Worlds you want to bring up? Otherwise, we can talk about some other Star Trek news which came out before we end the stream.
Well, we got some. Let's go to other Star Trek. I think I've talked about everything I need to talk about.
While we talk about other Star Trek news, if people in chat would like to ask any questions about this episode, feel free, and we'll get to them after we've talked about this news. So, Favre, do you want to talk about one of the news items which we got this week?
Sure, yeah. I think one of the big things was, I guess, Alex Kurtzman appearing on The Ready Room with Will Wheaton. It was actually a really long episode of The Ready Room. They're normally
it was an hour long,
20, 30 minutes. Yeah, this was an hour
cool.
long. So I don't think they cut much out of this interview. They had a bunch of juicy information they wanted to get out to the public. But one of the things in there was Kurtzman again talking about there being an upcoming Star Trek crossover. also mentioned that the Gorn will return to Strange New Worlds before the end of season
Yeah, he
one.
does say that.
They're going to save them for the finale, for something big at the end of the season. But that's something to look forward to.
Yeah, considering, there is more to La'an's backstory. So whether this is seeing the Gorn in present time, and, hopefully no one on the crew sees them, and it's just like a good little tease for us, or it's seeing them from a flashback with La'an maybe, and her brother, who, might still be alive, because it's really like, oh yeah, he then went away. It's like, did he die? Could he still be out there?
Yeah, and he even kind of teased what the Gorn might actually look like whenever we do finally get a glimpse of them. He said that you can't do a whole race of these aliens in CGI and like show a bunch of them because that's very expensive. But do you want to do it with puppetry or puppetry and CG sometimes, or how do you light it? And he ultimately decided like the best thing is that they don't want to show too much because it's always scarier when you can't see everything, when you can't make out all the little details.
Oh, okay, so it's probably going to be very dark shots, and
right,
we'll kind of see the.
It kind of helps fit things into canon too. The less people know about the Gorn, or wait, let me put it this way: the more mysterious the Gorn are, the less likely it is to contradict what's been established in the original series.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, so that's definitely interesting. I could definitely see them going the puppetry costume route, because it seems like Strange New Worlds very much is going back to a lot of techniques which were previously used.
Right.
So that would definitely be nice. Whether it's more like, because it'll definitely be a modernization, reimagining of the Gorn, I imagine. So it's whether they go the route of very Velociraptor style Enterprise Gorn, or the Disco Ball Gorn from the original series, or the the cut scenes of the Gorn in 2009, which were very orcish. It's just the best I can describe them. So whichever they use.
You shared that a while ago, right, Dom?
Yes, I post a lot of
Yes,
Gorn
I
stuff,
remember
so,
seeing it on
yeah.
your feed. I don't know how I remember these
Oh,
things. But
no, that was a design for the Gorn from the 2013 Star Trek game, which,
okay.
there are Gorn in that game, which are very monster-like, is the best way to describe them.
Monster-like.
But there's some concept art of some really weird Gorn from that game, which weren't used. So yes, if you would like to see them, it's on my Twitter somewhere. You can find it.
I'm really looking forward to seeing, if they do in fact show the Gorn, what they're gonna look like, and I do have a lot of faith that they're gonna get it right. They will update it or whatever, but I think it'll be just right. I don't know. I have a good feeling about it.
Yeah, and then Geek Filter mentions that they were seen in a pocket universe in the animated series. Yes, when they were on like the council, and they just looked like the TOS one. So, yeah. And one thing which Valamis notes from this episode is that we got to see Sam Kirk again.
Yes,
who has been missing since probably episode 2.
And now we know why. He's conflict averse.
Yeah, okay. I didn't actually put together that that's an excuse they're using for why he's not seen.
No, that was me. I don't think that's anything the show's doing, but I just love that
excuse for
line.
Hemmer. How come we ain't seen no more Hemmer?
Yeah, we ain't seen no Hemmer either. It's true. And I'm really worried about my series husband, Chief Kyle. He's only credited for. We can't trust everything on IMDb. He's only credited for 7 episodes.
We can't trust everything on IMDb because someone thought it would be funny to be like, oh, T'Pring's in 13 episodes. And it's like. No, and she was credited in every single one, including season 2. And it's like, no.
But yeah, so my transporter chief husband, hopefully nothing bad will happen to him.
Well, he's
I'm
been in
always
every
looking out for him.
episode so far.
Yes.
I don't think he's gonna die. He's not part of the regular
Yeah, I don't think
cast.
so
He's-
either.
he's just a
What
recurring
was interesting
character.
was the fact that this episode is technically a Pike episode because, we get Pike at the doing the log at the beginning. So, I thought the first episode was a Pike episode, so that dwindles
the
the
first
amount
one
of
had
episodes.
a Una log entry.
Oh, was it
The
Una?
first yeah.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't always.
It doesn't always track, but it's a good indicator.
I think we'll see that divert more.
There's definitely a
moves
focus so far. There's definitely a focus on whoever does the log, because I think the Pike Alora story was very central to this episode in terms of like Pike was kind of like us, like what's wrong with the Alorans? They're great, not the Alorans, sorry, the Magellans. They're great.
Right.
Like, I don't get it. Like, he was even like, why'd you call me up here? Oh, why do you want to hide anything from my girlfriend? So it's like, I think that was like the central. But yeah, I don't think they'll do that forever.
Okay,
I don't think that's going to be a continuing.
Starfleet
trope.
Boy, I will ask you, who was your husband of this episode?
It was Ensign Shankar.
Was he on communications?
He was
Yeah.
on communications.
Yes.
Very cute Ensign Shankar,
Yes.
who got a little highlight this episode. That was
I guess Ensign Christina is still busy micro cleaning the transporter pad.
Yes. Yeah, it depends how long
Well,
that
she
shift
wasn't there.
takes. Yeah.
with mean Chief Kyle. He protracted it out to like a week or two. He's like, it's gonna, you better stop telling people I'm mean or I'll be meaner. But
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, it was Ensign Shankar this week. Thank you for asking, Dom.
It's always interesting to know what character you latched onto this week. But yeah, is there anything else, or is that it for this week's episode of Trek Central Weekly? Talking about episode 6 of Strange New Worlds. Is there anything?
Nothing
in
on
chat?
my side. This is a fun discussion.
Was
This
there
episode's
one
so
other
deep.
Trek news? But yes, there is a lot to discuss, and I'm sure we can
there's
talk
some
a lot
Picard
more.
news.
Yes.
Yes.
Let's end with
Yes.
that. Yes.
So
I like
from
that.
2 of the actors, or I guess 3 of the actors. 3 of the actors have said something
Yes.
lately. But between Marina Sirtis, LeVar Burton, and Brent Spiner, we have a little bit of information. Brent saying that he believes the show is premiering in February.
Yeah.
So, I think that's right. That's kind of what I had been thinking for a while. Even though
I was thinking
they had
probably
a
end
long
of year, but
post-production.
that's a long post-production. But that might mean a lot of stuff, because considering the amount of ship shots we get, it's probably more of a post-production than season 2, because there's probably more space stuff.
we've been promised a lot of ship action.
Yes. Lots of ships, yes.
They also still have 20 episodes of Star Trek that they're bringing us after Strange New Worlds this year that they've promised between Lower Decks and
10.
Prodigy. So I think
Yeah,
they
that
probably
counts.
felt like they needed to save it until next year because they had plenty of Star Trek for this year.
Yes.
But LeVar Burton has mentioned that Geordi will be a family man. He's going to have kids. One of his 2 daughters will be played by his real-life daughter, Mika.
Mika Burton.
Who we know her from some of the Star Trek days. She was like
Yep.
co-hosting with Will Wheaton and stuff. And Marina Sirtis said that yes, we are not doing cameos. We have like big juicy roles. There's going to be moments where you see like all 7 of us together on
I love
screen at
it.
the same time, and she's very very excited to kind of do like a big. She's been very vocal of someone who is like not happy with Nemesis, so she was happy to do like this,
Yeah,
I
which
guess
is
a
fair.
proper standoff.
Yeah, I think a
Yeah.
lot of them talk about, we thought we were going to do another movie, and then Nemesis was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'll definitely be interesting when that hits our screens in
They're gonna
maybe
give it
February.
their all. That tells, yeah, they're gonna
And
give
then
it their all.
we have that Discovery season 5
Yes,
is
Michelle
starting to
Paradise.
film. And we have actually like no idea what this season will be, because the last couple of seasons have very much teased what will be next, from the Enterprise appearing, going to the future, to the future's kind of revealed, but there's still places out there let's go, let's fly, whatever she says. And season 5 is just like, what could happen? So that'll be very interesting.
I love it.
Oh, Kovic. They give us a little setup with Kovic. He's like, oh, there's something serious that needs my attention.
Oh,
Remember?
yeah. That's right. Yeah, because so Kovic and is it, what's the name of the Ronnie Rose character on
Bryce.
the show? Bryce is called off to do something, and he's like,
"Oh, I didn't really see that as a season 5 thing. I just saw
but it
that
is
as
a dangling.
But it is a dangling thing. Yeah,
yeah, it's a dangling thing. It never comes into play with this season, so it might actually have something to do with next season. But I'm actually hopeful that Discovery's gonna like chill out finally and just like
yes,
like
hopefully.
I don't know, like
hopefully they take some of the successful ideas from Stranger Worlds, see that, oh, okay, well, Spock Amok was really successful. We don't have to do a comedy episode, but at least, let's just hang out on, on Starfleet HQ or wherever. So it would be nice to see some downtime from... we do get some downtime. The crew does get some downtime with like, it's been a year since the last season and all that stuff. But it would be nice to see it on the screen as well.
Tunde said they were gonna have a little bit more some old-fashioned type storytelling. So I don't know what he meant by that, but he said like, some stuff's gonna feel a little bit more like classic Star Trek. But I feel like they kind of say that all the time in Discovery, so I'm not sure what they meant. I think it might mean less reliant on a season-long arc. I would love Discovery to take the Enterprise Season 4 format and do these, little 2-episode, 3-episode story, maybe more if you need that. But, let's try that. I think that might be a really fun thing to explore on Discovery.
Yeah, definitely. And, people in chat says similar. Laura says maybe Discovery could go with smaller arcs. And I agree because I really like Season 4.
Amen.
So, yeah, I think that is that for this week. We had a very interesting episode to discuss, a very dark, a very deep episode, which hits home quite recently for a lot of us. So it's an episode which I'm sure will be discussed for a while. And unfortunately, probably its message will probably be relevant for at least the close future. Hopefully things change. But we hope you enjoyed watching us just talk about this and all the other Star Trek stuff. Do you want to sign off and where people can find you, starting with you, Favre?
Sure. You can follow me on Twitter at TXTrek. We do a live show on YouTube every Friday night, 7 p.m. Central, where we take a very deep dive look at these new episodes. We go in with a subdermal scalpel. Yes. We carve it up, beat by beat, analyze every little bit of it. And we also make that show available wherever you listen to your podcast.
Very nice. Starfleet Boy, where can people find you?
You can find me, just do a search for Starfleet Boy on Google and you'll find me on all the things, but primarily I'm hanging out on Twitter and on YouTube. And I just want to thank you, Dom, and Trek Central for hosting this chat. It's such a great, fun thing that I look forward to, and the audience every week comes in here with some really cool points, and I learn something and have new perspectives. And if you like this, share it and tell folks to come and hang out with us on Sundays in the future. Don't forget to smash the like button also, because it'll confound the YouTube algorithm, and we love
smash the like button, hit the bell, subscribe, share it on social media, all that stuff.
Do all the things. Yeah, we love having you, audience. Sorry we can't get to all the comments, but you guys have really great discussions in the chat.
Yes, saw some great discussions in the chat. And if you are interested in seeing more stuff from us here at Trek Central, we recently put out a video on the Stargazer, the Sagan class, which was an amazing video to write. I wrote a script for that, and it goes really in detail to, the bioneural gel packs are referred to as Starfleet Tide Pods in the files. So hopefully no ensigns eat the new Isolania chips. And it recently got shared on Facebook by Doug Drexler, who was one of the people who worked on the Stargazer. And obviously it's edited really well by our editor Troy and narrated by the excellent voice. If you thought my voice was great, you'll have to listen to Ensign, I think he's now a lieutenant, Adam, as he makes my scripts less dense and more funny to listen to, and informational and enjoyable.
It was a great video. Video.
Yes.
If you love ships in your Star Trek and you're a ship nerd, then it's a must-watch. You'll appreciate that new Stargazer so much more. I didn't think I could love that ship more than I already did, but I do now after watching that video.
Don't eat the linear chips.
Yeah. But yes, as always, thanks for watching. Live long and prosper, and we'll see you guys later.